An indebted cartoonist enlists the help of a beautiful police detective to secure the funds linked to a pact he made with his friends. 7 years ago, Michael Delaney attended the wedding of his friend Max, who got married to hot-tempered Kimberly, the only girlfriend he ever had. Interestingly, the bride's father was involved in developing a medication to enhance masculinity. Before the ceremony, Kimberly's sister Trisha discreetly crushed the performance-enhancing tablet and added it to the wine as her unique gift to the couple. However, Michael's best friend Kyle Brenner took the bottle and initiated drinking it with Max and the rest of the groomsmen, leading to an embarrassing incident during the ceremony. Following this, the bachelor joined the other male attendees at the after-party and openly revealed his commitment to becoming a professional tomcat or womanizer. In response, Kyle joined him, expressing his desire to be with every woman except his loved ones. When Jan hinted that he had no intention of tying the knot, the groomsmen playfully teased him by pointing out that he was practically married to his girlfriend Kelly. In light of this banter, the man began to suspect that the next member of their group to marry would be Steve, who doesn't have a girlfriend. In response to the teasing, the bachelor announces his idea. Whoever ultimately became the last unmarried man within their group would receive $1,000. Upon hearing this proposal, Kyle took interest and suggested that each of them should set aside a few $100 annually into a savings fund, with the entire sum going to the last remaining bachelor. Subsequently, the groomsmen, including Gary, who was into men, formed a circle and wholeheartedly agreed to the pact. 7 years later, Steve ties the knot with Trisha, thus forfeiting his opportunity to claim the bachelor money, which has grown to $500,000. After the wedding, Michael spends some time with Shelby, the only single woman at the ceremony. However, he abruptly withdraws from their intimate moment and asks her to leave when he mistakenly assumes she expects him to declare "I love you." Upon realizing his misunderstanding, the bachelor hurriedly attempts to chase after her but accidentally collides with a waiter at the casino. Upon witnessing this, Stephen comforts his friend, advising him to seek out someone else. A short while later, Michael encounters a striking woman named Amber, whom he learns is only attracted to wealthy men. He invites her to join him while he gambles to impress her with his grand financial status. When Trisha notices that Michael is losing a significant amount of money, she informs her husband, Steve, who promptly attempts to intervene. However, as soon as the bachelor quits the game, Amber takes over and rolls the dice, leading to another loss. Consequently, the men take Michael and Steve to the pit boss, Carlos, who informs the bachelor that he has accumulated a debt totaling $51,000. Upon hearing the accusation, the bachelor attempts to defend himself, contending that the debt should fall on the woman since she was the one who rolled the dice. In response, the pit boss replays the surveillance tapes, and Steve inadvertently witnesses footage of his wife engaging intimately with another woman. When the supervisor presents the video with the bachelor's debt, he emphasizes that Michael was holding the dice before handing it to the woman. In response, the indebted man explains that he lacks the funds, disclosing his occupation as a cartoonist for the Sunday edition of Garfield Comics. Upon hearing this, the supervisor praises his work, but reminds him to settle the outstanding balance within the month. Following this, the cartoonist and Steve return to their hotel room, where Trisha suggests the artist find someone to lend him money. Upon hearing the advice, Michael realizes that his sole chance to settle his debt is to win the Bachelor Fund. However, it dawns on him that only he and his best friend are the last remaining contenders in the bet. The next day, the desperate cartoonist meets Kyle on the golf course. During their conversation, the rich man discloses that he has only indeed fallen in love once with a woman named Natalie Parker, who happened to be a bridesmaid at Max's wedding. At his apartment, while coloring sketches, Michael recalls having a photo from Max's wedding with the groomsmen and bridesmaids. He unpins it from the bulletin board and searches for Kyle's past love. Meanwhile, the debt collectors enter his flat and take his couch. The following day, the cartoonist visits his friend Steve so he can learn more about Natalie through Trisha. As the man heads upstairs to call his wife, he sees his partner with another woman in the bathroom, suspecting they are intimate. However, he realizes they are just cleaning together when he opens the shower curtains. Following this, the indebted man asks Trisha about Natalie, pretending he's interested in the woman. To help the cartoonist, she discloses what she looks like and reveals where he can find her. That night, Michael spots the streetwalker trying to find a customer. He then approaches the woman to get a closer look. When he confirms that it's Natalie, he tries to propose something, claiming that another guy is involved. However, upon hearing this, the woman discloses her true identity as a police detective and proceeds to arrest the cartoonist for solicitation. During the interrogation, the sobbing Michael confesses to Officer Hurley and his colleague that he wants to meet Natalie to set her up with Kyle. His plan is for them to form a romantic connection, and if they marry, he would be the last bachelor standing and win the fund. Upon hearing this, the investigator claims not to know anyone by that name and later releases him. The next day, the indebted man contacts a representative to inquire about increasing his credit limit. To his surprise, he discovers that Carlos has already deactivated his card. Suddenly, the doorbell rings, and to Michael's surprise, he finds Natalie at the door. She reveals that she has researched Kyle's background and discovers he is wealthy. When the detective questions why he didn't borrow money from his friend, the cartoonist explains that Kyle wasn't willing to lend him any money. Subsequently, the detective discloses her willingness to participate in Michael's plan and suggests they split the money evenly. She reveals her grudge against Kyle, recounting how he has abandoned her with a roll of quarters after their casual encounter. That evening, Natalie and Michael secretly hide behind the bushes near the golfer's house to investigate the man's type. Utilizing binoculars, the detective observes that the subject prefers brunettes who wear subservient uniforms. Once Kyle departs from his residence with his stewardess date, the detective covertly enters his home to install some listening devices. Behind the bushes, the cartoonist watches the woman and comments how terrified yet turned on he is, not realizing the recording device is on. The following day, the bachelor spends time with his wealthy friend and Steve at the sauna to record their conversation. It turns out that the golfer has left his previous date and is currently seeing a cosmetics counter woman. Later that night, Natalie and Michael park outside the house of Kyle's date. The detective notices a drawing of herself in the cartoonist's sketchbook inside the car. She takes it and recommends that he consider selling his illustrations. However, he explains that launching his comic strip is challenging. Suddenly, a noise interrupts their conversation, and they both turn their attention to see the wealthy golfer hastily leaving the residence. As he runs away, he declares his hate for two-story houses. The next day, Natalie meets up with Michael at an outdoor restaurant for their surveillance mission on Kyle, who happens to be at a nearby store. Later, as they observe the passage of a sweet elderly couple, their eyes meet, sharing a moment of connection. During that night, the detective diligently transcribes her recorded conversations. As she listens to the recording, she smiles when she comes across Michael's remark about her when he was behind the bushes. The following morning, the cartoonist spends time with Kyle at a fitness center. During their conversation, he inquires his friend if he prefers taking the initiative in relationships, to which the rich golfer responds that he enjoys being surprised. Later, another collector seizes the indebted man's car and phone. On the next day, Michael joins a gathering with his friends. During the event, Trisha introduces him to Natalie, oblivious that they are collaborating to get the bachelor cash. While they dine, the cartoonist becomes overwhelmed by the presence of children around him. Later that night, Natalie and the cartoonist stroll along the beach. As they walk, the indebted man confesses his regret about not asking her out during Max's wedding. Just as they are about to kiss, Michael abruptly pulls away, realizing that he's making a mistake. In a sudden turn of events, the police detective retrieves her weapon and points it at a graffiti artist who had appeared behind them. The following day, the cartoonist reminds himself not to fall for Natalie while painting an image of her on his apartment wall. Behind him, the debt collectors continue to take his possessions. During her work shift, the police detective confides in her colleague, admitting that she's developing romantic feelings for Michael. Seeking advice on how to gauge his feelings, her colleague suggests a somewhat unconventional approach, making Michael jealous by pretending to be falling for Kyle. The following day, Natalie and the cartoonist put their plan into action. She assumes the role of a cosmetics counter saleswoman, and Michael takes Kyle to the store to introduce him to her once more. Following this, the investigator and the golfer begin dating. One night, a concerned Michael hides behind the bushes, anxiously observing as Natalie begins to share an intimate moment with his friend. Aware of the situation, Natalie deliberately steps on the listening device and switches on the lights to blind Michael, who is wearing night vision goggles. After she closes the curtains, she entices the golfer, but refrains from sharing an intimate moment with him. Following her colleague's advice the next day, the detective meets Michael at a public library to inform him that she has fallen for Kyle. In response, the cartoonist attempts to caution her about his womanizer friend. Natalie asks him if he loves anyone to confirm his feelings for her. However, when the bachelor claims he doesn't, she secretly feels hurt and politely leaves. Upon learning that the detective has fallen for his friend, Michael's heart sinks and he retreats to the bathroom, clearly heartbroken. To move on, he starts dating Jill, a redhead, soft-spoken librarian, only to eventually discover she is a brutal woman. The following morning, Michael meets up with Kyle, who makes a concerning discovery of a lump in his private area. Alarmed by this, they promptly visit their proctologist friend Steve, who confirms that it's something serious. Later, another doctor reviews the results and delivers distressing news that the golfer has a severe medical condition requiring surgical intervention. When the wealthy man inquires about the possibility of continuing intimate relations with women, the medical professional recommends that he consider banking his reproductive fluid. Upon hearing this suggestion, Kyle invites Michael to accompany him to the fertility bank. However, as the cartoonist proceeds with the procedure, he finds himself envisioning Natalie. Following the golfer's surgery, he asks his best friend to retrieve his surgically removed private part. In a gesture of friendship, the cartoonist complies and enters the laboratory. However, when he locates Kyle's jar, he accidentally shatters it, causing its contents to spill and make their way into a doctor's meal. To solve his problem, Michael devises a plan and places a walnut in a container, intending to present it to his best friend. When he hands the container to the golfer, Kyle gratefully thanks him for what he believes is saving his life, unaware that the bottle's contents are not his private part. The patient encourages the cartoonist to pursue relationships with every woman. That night, the bachelor has a dream where a line of women eagerly waits to spend intimate moments with him. He abruptly wakes up and receives a phone call from Carlos, who informs him that he only has 3 days and 14 hours left to settle his outstanding debt. The next day, Michael meets Kyle and Natalie at a lavish restaurant. The golfer expresses his gratitude to his best friend for orchestrating their reconnection, mentioning that the detective had informed him. Before they start their meal, the wealthy man makes a public proposal to the detective, leading to applause from everyone when she says yes. Later that day, Michael confides in Steve about his genuine feelings for Natalie and his sadness over her impending marriage to the womanizer golfer. When the proctologist advises him to express his true feelings to the cop, the cartoonist insists that she is already in love with Kyle. At the rich man's bachelor party, Michael discovers that his best friend regards Natalie as a housewife and firmly states that he has no intention of giving up his womanizing lifestyle. Later, a drunken Steve congratulates him in advance, confident he will win the fund. However, Michael dismisses the notion, asserting he has a wedding to stop. The following day, at the city hall, Natalie feels apprehensive about her impending marriage. Suddenly, Trisha arrives and notices the handcuff design on the bouquet's ribbon, making her disappointed that the bride allowed her future husband to plan the wedding. Suddenly, Officer Hurley inquires if his colleague is ready to marry Kyle. Before the cop can respond, the groom unexpectedly arrives, announcing that his Uncle Murray will officiate their wedding. Meanwhile, Michael oversleeps and upon awakening, he rushes to interrupt the ceremony. In his haste, he borrows a fur coat from an intoxicated woman. However, as he leaves the venue, he inadvertently disrupts an animal rights event, resulting in attendees spray painting him for wearing something out of animal fur. After successfully extricating himself from the crowd, the cartoonist flees into a nearby park, shocking a kid. This event prompts a police officer to misinterpret his actions and pursue him. Meanwhile, the womanizing Kyle begins to exhibit hesitation as the wedding officiator emphasizes that he should only love Natalie and no one else. While attempting to evade the police, the cartoonist finds himself on the opposite side of the city hall. As he crosses the road, a truck lightly collides with him. Undeterred, he continues running towards the city hall, determined to arrive in time to halt the wedding. However, he interrupts the wrong couple upon his arrival, inadvertently causing them to move to the annulment booth. On the floor, Michael comes across Natalie's bouquet and picks it up, identifying it as hers by the distinctive handcuff design on the ribbon. At that moment, he comprehends that he has arrived too late and the love of his life has already married Kyle. Consequently, the cartoonist becomes the last bachelor standing, thus winning the fund and settling his debt. Days later, Michael catches sight of Kyle with another woman. He reprimands his best friend for his actions, leading the lady to leave when she realizes he is already married. Due to this confrontation, the wealthy man punches his friend and alleges that he and the detective conspired against him. When Michael displays confusion, Kyle recounts that Natalie had struck him with a roll of quarters on his wedding night and departed the next day. This incident led to the annulment of their marriage, and ever since that day, the detective had vanished without a trace. As a result of this revelation, the rich golfer suspects that the police detective and Michael had schemed to obtain the bachelor's money, unaware that his suspicion is, in fact, accurate. Subsequently, Kyle maintains an optimistic outlook on his future and reveals that he is already dating a redhead librarian who gifted him a book. When Michael recognizes the woman Kyle refers to, he enthusiastically suggests that the book will change his friend's life. Filled with excitement and hope, the cartoonist leaves so he can find the love of his life. That night, Michael returns to where he first encountered Natalie, finding her once again posing as a streetwalker. He hands her the bouquet and proposes to her, leading them to marry finally. Meanwhile, a bound Kyle spends time with the brutal librarian. On the other hand, Steve discovers his doubts are accurate and his wife is into women.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.